Good day. Welcome to the Onslow County Museum. My name is Miss Emily, and today we're going to be talking all about the colonial period. So historians typically date the colonial period from about 1600 to 1776, so the start of the American Revolution. People who we would call colonists or colonials were traveling here to the New World. So before it was even called America, it was just this new place where people were coming from places like England, and France, and Germany. And they were traveling here to the New World to create a new life for themselves. Once the colonists settled here, they would settle in a place, what we would call a colony. So a colony is a territory that is owned or controlled by the home country or the mother country of the person's origin. So if these people came from England, they would settle in a colony, and that colony and the people that lived there were still controlled by England, their home country. So colonists, when they settled here, reasons why they settled here was to start a new life for themselves, to create a betterment for themselves and later for their families. In 1713, we have our first settlers here in what we would now call Onslow County. By the 1730s, we have over 200 families living here. And the reasons why people were coming here to what we now call Onslow County is for three main reasons. So the first reason is for the trees. We have longleaf pine trees here. And we still do, it's just that we don't have as many as them. But longleaf pine trees were the base of what we would call the naval stores industry here. So that's basically where we would make tar and pitch, and that would help to build ships and make our ships watertight so you don't get any leakage of water coming in your ships. So we have our trees that helped produce the naval industry here. We also have the waterway, so that's number two. Here in Onslow, we have two rivers. We have the New River and we have the White Oak River. So these rivers were perfect for transportation, not just of goods, so items, things that we could then trade or barter or pay for, but also for people. So the waterways were perfect transportation, kind of like water roadways for people and goods to kind of move around. So that was perfect for traveling. And the third, our last one, is the soil. So we have very rich land, rich soil here, which is perfect for growing crops. So food, peas and corn were the two most things that were grown, and that was perfect for the colonists to eat. So we had a lot of prosperity here in what we now would call Onslow County. So lots of people came and moved and settled here. So we end up building homes. They're popping up everywhere. And they helped create towns and communities. So as you can see, I am standing in a typical frame construction of a colonial home. So this is what a colonial home would have looked like. We usually say that the style of a colonial home here in Onslow would have been a coastal cottage style. So while we do have log construction, so typically we think, oh, well, they're building log houses. Well, while that is true, here in Onslow, we don't really see a lot of that. While it is around, it's just not as popular. So here in Onslow, we're more of the coastal cottage style versus the log construction style home. But this area in our colonial home would represent the hall parlor. So this is the gathering place of our colonial family. So this is where they would come to eat, talk, sew, play games. This is the center hub of a colonial family's home. This is where they come and they gather and they talk and they get together at the end of the long work day. So typically in a colonial family, your women, your wives, your mothers, and the young girls would typically work in the home. So the home is their workplace. And they would do their daily chores, whether it was candle making, sewing, patching up clothes, cooking. Those were all duties, jobs that our young women and mothers and grandmothers did. Now for the men, your fathers and young boys, their jobs were outside of the home. So whether they were farming, so your father, who may have been a farmer, is teaching their young sons how to farm, so that later when they grow up, they also know how to do that trade or that job. Or you may have had coopers. So coopers would have been making barrels. So remember we talked about the longleaf pine trees, right? That Naval Industry stores that we had here. Well, we had to make something, a barrel, to put that tar and pitch in. So coopering is somebody who made barrels. So if your father was a cooper, you would go and learn how to do that trade. So typically, your women are inside the home working and men are outside the home working. And at the end of the long workday, they all come back and gather here. Now we talked about children, so your young girls and your young boys, they are doing chores, they are working. But after their chores were done, they could have some fun. So they could play games. Games that we have today, so things like hopscotch, tag, things like dolls. So if you come and look, we've got some dolls here. So you could have something very, very simple, like a yarn doll. So this is what would be left over from making yarn, from sewing, from clothes making. So something so simple as making a yarn doll. Or you could have a more elaborate doll, which actually, she's got an apron, a skirt. She looks very much like me, right? So this is their style of clothing, and their dolls would reflect that. So you could have dolls. We also could have toy soldiers. So these are made out of metal, but toy soldiers could also be made out of wood. So it just depends on what resources they had available to them and what they could actually afford or purchase, or if not, barter. We also could have played with the cup and ball. So we still have this game today. It just may look a little bit differently. The object of the game is still the same. You try to get the ball to land inside the cup, except their cup's a little bit smaller than maybe what cup and ball games are today. But this would have been the colonial style of the cup and ball. And they would have a game called graces. And that would be a hoop that you see like this with some ribbon or yarn attached to it. And then they would have two rods. And usually you would play this with a partner. So the object is to throw or fling the hoop to your partner using your rods. So typically we would cross your rod and then let it go. And it would fling the hoop through the air to your partner, and your partner would have to catch it with their rod or rods, whichever they would like to use. So graces was another game that children could play after their chores were done. So that's just a little bit into the colonist life during the colonial period. Please be sure to check out our other videos on our website. Thank you for joining me today, and take care.